Welcome back to the Ordinary Millionaire podcast. On today's podcast, we have Ryan. Ryan is a successful Airbnb property manager. He manages, was it 60 or 70 properties?
Yeah.
70 properties. And I think you just started 2 years ago, maybe around 3 years now. So really short time period to become as successful as he is. So I wanted to bring him on here so we could learn a little bit more about himself, that business model. I love the content that he's putting out. It's fun to watch. It's great. I think you got some really good little series that you're doing on there, and I think other people could value from it. So Ryan, let's start out with just a little bit of an intro, who you are, what you were doing before you kind of got into that short-term rental space, and just how you found your way.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate this opportunity to share the story and just where we're at now. It's me and two business partners. We are the owners of 5-star vacation home rentals in Austin, Texas and San Antonio, Texas. We have 70 short-term rentals that we manage on behalf of other owners. So essentially the business model is pretty simple. An owner owns a home. We manage that home. We market it on sites like Airbnb, VRBO, our direct booking site, and then we manage those bookings. So the cleans, the maintenance, we handle all of the bookkeeping on top of that, and then everything in between, essentially a white glove service. So owners receive a paycheck from us at the end of the month for how much their property made. The typical split from that is, a 20% commission to the management company. And that's allowed us to get our business right around that $1 million in EBITDA mark. And started it 2 years ago from zero. And before kind of all of this was a thing, it was, going to university, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Initially, it was a sports agent because I was an athlete growing up. And I realized I got to go to law school for that. And I was like, I don't want to go to more school. I want to start on something now. And really, real estate stood out from probably around that time, like early, college days. I was seeing other people that were in real estate that were, my parents' friends or people I'd see, at the tennis club. And, what do you do? Oh, I'm in real estate. But they just got back from a month-long trip. I'm like, how are you in real estate? How are you still traveling and doing all these cool things? And they always said real estate. So it led me to explore that path. That I started doing it on more of a, corporate front and realized I didn't like all the restrictions that came with, working under others. And it eventually led me to starting my own thing. And I saw an Instagram ad for short-term rental management. And I ended up clicking on that, going through a course, learning the entire business within 30, actually not even, it was like 14 days. I got my first client and it was just the same model I explained where we're reaching out to owners to manage properties on their behalf, putting them on these sites like Airbnb, VRBO, and then we are collecting revenue and we take a percentage of that. So that's kind of in a nutshell what's going on over here, and then starting to buy up some properties too, and moving more towards the investor side, but really focused on building up the management business as much as we can until we can really lean into the investor side of it.
Love it. I think what I just got from that, which I thought was pretty cool, is that you took an online course, which I think all of us have seen online courses, online coaching programs. There's always a lot of sort of hate for those, I would say, because there's a lot of people out there just, peddling garbage that's not really teaching people anything, or they're just not good at what they do. But it's always nice to hear when someone's like, hey, I took a course, I learned what it taught me, I put into action, and now I'm making some serious money. So I think that was pretty cool because most people don't learn a lot from a course, or actually once they take a course, take action. So that's pretty wild that you took a course, implemented it, and now you got $1 million company within 2 years. So it just goes to show people, hey, you know what? The education's out there, the learning's out there. If you just take the time, learn it, and then actually take action, you can be successful in a relatively short period of time. I do sort of want to go back to the first property, because I think you just said you found your first client in 14 days. Mm-hmm. Was it 14 days? Yeah, 14 days.
Yeah,
what did you do? I want a person who's listening now to hear you and be like, okay, how could I find my first Airbnb client to manage and start this business off. So what
Yeah.
did you do?
Yeah, I can give you essentially exactly if they're like, hey, I'm at zero and I want my first property under management in 14 days, I'll give you what I would do and what
Love
I
it.
did. So the first thing is you got to figure out what are you talking about? You can't just go to an owner and be like, hey, I want to manage your property. And they're like, all right, so how does that work? And you have no idea. So like first, like understand the service that you offer as a Airbnb property manager. So I mentioned a few things. You coordinate cleanings, you handle all maintenance and repairs. You want to handle revenue management, so pricing the property, because that's a huge factor for a successful host versus an unsuccessful host is, are you getting booked at the rate you should be getting booked at? And is the occupancy where it's supposed to be? Also figuring out how to market a listing. How do you build out an Airbnb listing? I'm sure you've seen listings where it's taken with grandma's phone and it's got grandma's furniture and there's a few sentences on the description. That's not going to book as well as something with professional photos and SEO optimized listing descriptions. So like kind of understanding that and what makes a listing successful versus unsuccessful. And then we also handle the bookkeeping, all that kind of stuff. So really just like at a general level, you don't need to know everything. As I was building my first few clients, I didn't know half of what I probably should have known. But you mentioned one other thing is like you have to take the action and you learn a lot through the action. So once you have a general understanding of what this business is and how we serve clients, that's when you start doing your outreach or your business development. So in order to do that, I needed some marketing materials. So I have a website now, which proves a little bit of credibility. I have some flyers that I'm posting up at coffee shops. I'm sending digital versions of those to potential prospect clients. And then I'm hitting the phones. Like that was a big part of the initial outreach was I am skip tracing a list of owners that own Airbnbs in Austin, Texas. And it's very accessible information. You can hire a skip tracer. You can even go to some of your county's offices to pull all the STR permits or short-term rental permits to see who these owners are. And then one of the biggest things for anyone starting a business is going to people that already know, like, and trust you. And I'm sure you've probably heard this 100 times, but like, who's really going to be the people buying your products? It's going to be people that know you and are like, oh, Matthew's a driven guy. Ryan's a driven guy. He's starting this company. Like, maybe I do know, Sarah or, Nick that already has this property. I should connect them with Ryan. So I was going on Facebook and I was making posts. Hey, I'm doing this in Austin, Texas. I'm managing Airbnbs. Do you know anyone that owns a property out here that might be interested in seeing what it would make? I think a big thing we use for outreach when it comes to Airbnb management business development is their property's revenue potential. So like, hey, are you curious? Do you have a vacation home that's just sitting there making you $0 or maybe negative money per year after the taxes and all the costs? Or could you be making, let's say, $150,000 on that property? So like, let's have a conversation. I also have access to all of the data. So there's sites like AirDNA where I can go in and I can say, how much is the property right off of 123 Main Street making? Because I'm going to use that as a comparable for your property where you might not have known that you're sitting on a property that can make you $200,000 in gross revenue. So now I'm just trying to get as many conversations as possible. So it's a mixture of cold calls, hanging up flyers in coffee shops, reaching out on Facebook to different people that, might have a mutual connection. And then the last one, this is how I got my very first client, is I started going into agents' offices. Because in my head, who knows the most real estate owners? Likely, I think agents, maybe lenders, but I'm going with real estate agents. So I went into their office with flyers. There was this one agent, and I don't know why, because I didn't do this for every agent office, but there was one day I bought a box of cookies. I had a flyer and I was like, I'm going to go introduce myself. And I brought them the cookies, I brought them the flyers, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I didn't have a property. I didn't have any experience doing this, but I was like, this is what I'm doing. I'm showing up with some confidence. I'm showing up with a little charisma. And if you know anyone, put us in touch and let's see if it's a good fit. But I'm here to help make Airbnb ownership passive and really provide a solution to people with vacation homes or looking to, optimize or maximize the rental income on their residential property. So that led to conversation. That one visit to an agent office led to a conversation with an owner. And that ended up being my first client after we did a walkthrough. I explained what the process looks like. So really, I need to get all the information for that property. Then I need to get professional photos done for that property. We need to make sure it's stocked with linens and towels and all that. And then I mentioned I went through a course. So at the same time, I'm learning the information, and then I'm going to apply that information in real time. And I had to accept that I didn't know everything that I was doing, but I was going to do it anyway because I knew all of the teachings that I needed, all of the learnings I needed were going to happen through the actions. And then every single conversation after that just got easier and easier and easier as I figured out more of the answers. And then a thing I will throw in is like maybe a tip for anyone starting a business that's like, I don't actually know what I'm doing. One of the best things I was doing in these business development calls for new potential clients, if I didn't know an answer, I said, oh, I have a great resource on that. Let me shoot you a follow-up email with that information afterwards. And that was like my ability to maneuver any objections. Of course, you don't want to do that for every question, but usually I would have some questions I didn't know the answer to. So I'd say, let me send you a resource on that. I'll follow up in an email with that information. And then we move past it. And then I would do all the research on the back end in my own private time. So anyway, hopefully that all, was able to land and be clear. But if I missed anything, let me know.
No, I think that was great. There's a bunch of different options for people there, different ways that people could use this to try to find business. If you were to recommend one, if there was a person who's like, okay, I heard 10 different great ideas there, but if you were to be like, hey, if you only got time for one of these because maybe you're working a 9 to 5, you got a family, you're just trying to get a side hustle going to start making some money, what would you focus like all your time and attention on to try to nab that first one and start to build that business and get that momentum?
Yeah. So I'd be cheating. Can I give you two?
Yeah, let's go with two. Sure.
Because I think we can do it with two. Because one might be a little tough, but the first one that I liked the most, as I mentioned, was agent outreach. So again, if you have limited time, you're working your 9 to 5, which a lot of people do as they're trying to start this business. You want to go for what are the one-to-many options where you can make one call that puts you in front of potentially many clients. So I think agents, and truly we've gotten so much business from agents because they are already boots on the ground. They already have the connections with owners. They're having the conversations to figure out what are the owner's goals, what are they sitting on in terms of, a potential rental property, or should they sell that property? But being their go-to resource for short-term rentals has put us in such a strong position to get new clients from them. And, then we're really fostering a relationship with, 5 agents that are sending us a bunch of business rather than trying to foster a relationship with 500 owners where, the close rate for 500 owners might be, 10%, where, with 10 agents, 50% of them are going to be open to having conversations with you as a potential, symbiotic, partnership where you can send them referrals, they can send you referrals. So that's number one. I really like agent outreach. And then if you're going to an agent, just kind of explaining where your value add to agents is. So the way I look at it is for sellers, you can market these properties as potential short-term rentals if it's the right fit. So in their listing, we can also provide them with AirDNA or just any revenue projections that come from data. So if they're marketing it as an investment property, they can say, this is a potentially $150,000, annual gross revenue property. So that's something that's marketable that can help their sellers. For buyers, we provide them with the information that helps them make more confident decisions if they're looking at investment strategies like a short-term rental play. For owners, a lot of owners don't realize they might be sitting on a property that could make them 6 figures a year. So we're also being the resource for that agent that does not have access to all the data we do, does not have all the experience and information we do. So we're helping their sellers, owners, and buyers make better decisions, which makes them in turn a better agent. So that's kind of the conversation we have with them. The second thing, which was huge for our business, was Google My Business. I think this is so important for service businesses specifically, which is when you look up best plumber in Austin, Texas, which is where we're based out of, you're probably going to go to the top 3 results that pop up. I don't know if you do that, but I do that whenever I would need a service. I'm going to say,
Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to call one of those first three, companies that pop up. So one of the very first things I did was set up a Google My Business. I started with people that already knew me, and I said, hey, I'm starting this business. Would you mind leaving me a review? You got to start somewhere. So would you mind leaving me a review? I went into ChatGPT. I had them write me, I think it was like 30 different, unique 5-star reviews. And then I had my friends and family leave me reviews. That was just to kind of get things started. Then eventually the reviews started coming from guests and owners, but that just got my property that boost it needed to start getting inbound calls, especially if you're in a busy 9 to 5. That is one of the best things in the world, is when it turns from outbound to inbound as a business owner. So having your outbound funnel, which is agent outreach, and then having your inbound funnel, which as a start will be Google My Business, and then getting a few, ideally as many reviews as you can. When I started to see conversion from Google My Business, I was around 30 reviews. So that's what it took. And it's different for every type of business, but in Austin for short-term rental management businesses, it was about 30 reviews until I started getting calls saying, hey, we have a property. We don't know what to do with it. I saw you on Google. Can we talk? And between those two, I scaled from 10 months to 10 properties. That was kind of the pace I went to, which at that rate, if we're talking real numbers, because I know everyone's like, all right, what does that actually mean? Like that was roughly like $6,000 a month. That was money in my pocket. So
okay, after all expenses and
another thing we can get into more is, as a property manager, what are the actual expenses of your business? They're really low. Like the margins are extremely high until you start to hire actually salaried employees. But especially with those first 10 properties, I was the only one on my team. I was a one-man shop. So the margin is like, what do I actually pay for? Because the owners are paying for the design. The owners are paying mostly for any, wear and tear, that kind of stuff, consumables. The owners pay for that. If there's any damage, it's typically on the guest. So as a property manager, I had to make sure, the website hosting site was paid for. I had to make sure, we had insurance, a couple softwares, but like there's really not a lot of costs to operating a short-term rental management company until you start to get employees. So that's a whole nother conversation. But, in 10 months, that's not bad to be able to nearly, replace the income I was making in my previous W-2 job.
No, I think that's a great takeaway. I think those are two good options because, like you said, you're getting the inbound, you're getting the outbound. And what I kind of learned from that is you don't really need any money to get started in this. Going and reaching out to realtors doesn't cost you a pack of cookies.
Yeah.
Right. And a little bit of time to print up some paper. A lot of that design and write up and other things you can do with Chat or Grok or whichever AI you want to use. So you can get your help through that. And then the reviews. Do you find that people who are staying at the Airbnbs are coming off platform to like actually leave you a Google review, or is it mostly just from the owners leaving reviews? And of course, I know you had your family and friends kind of help you get the ball rolling, which I think is a great strategy as well.
Yeah, you got it, that last one. So it's super similar to like, most service businesses these days. We have QR codes. Those are in every single property. So for every property, we have our electronic manual and we have our physical manual. And then in that manual, we have QR codes that said, if you enjoyed your stay, please leave us a review on Google. And then also in our guest messaging, we'll follow up and say, if you enjoyed your stay, please leave us a review on Google. If there's any lack of conviction to getting a 5-star review, we typically will, avoid sending that message because we want to keep the reviews as high as possible. But it's essentially, you don't get it if you don't ask. So every single guest that we believe will leave us a 5-star review, especially if we have a guest reaching out a few times, we're talking to them on the phone, we're going to try to get that review. Same thing with owners. We'll say, hey, if you enjoyed our service, or if you've enjoyed working with us, if you could leave us a 5-star review, that'd be awesome. We've also had other contractors, because as a property manager, you're working with all sorts of people. You have your cleaners, your maintenance, your plumbers, electricians, your pest control, your pool company. your lawn care, all these types of people. So they're asking us for reviews. So also there's a lot of like exchange. It's kind of like a flea
Mm,
market amongst service
yeah,
business
yeah.
owners. You leave us a
Love it.
review, we'll leave you one kind of thing. So yeah, kind of whatever it takes. But the most reviews we get are from guests because the quantity of guests is so large. Like we just calculated, I think we've had over 27,000 guests since we've been doing this. So that's a lot of potential reviews.
I think just to kind of summarize for everyone listening out there, if someone wanted to get started in this business today, they could set up a website. Do you even think they need to set up a website, or would you say not even
Yeah.
necessary
Yeah.
quite yet? Like if you got it, good, but if not, like just go out there, start reaching out to realtors in your community, get your Google My Review set up and kind of start to build that up. So eventually you can start to get some inbound stuff. And if you just keep working at that and hammering at that, your chances of getting your first client in a relatively reasonable period of time is quite high.
Yeah. So like if someone, again, going back to someone that might be starting at zero, the things that you really need in place, the first thing is like you got to figure out your company name, you got to figure out your logo, all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't spend much time on that at all. I think that distracts you from taking the action of like, all right, I got to reach out to clients. You need an LLC is how we structure it. I highly recommend getting a website. But like, again, you can build a website now in 2 hours. And you can just copy other examples of other property managers and then like a QuickBooks Online. So like there's really not a lot you need there to get started. Then the other thing is like, make your marketing material, use a Canva, use a Grok or a Claude design. There's so many options now with AI, but like LLC, website, QuickBooks Online, start your Google My Business, create your marketing materials, and then like you can get rolling pretty quickly. So I would just focus on those things, and then a lot of the rest of the questions you might have answer themselves as you get going. And like I learn a lot, especially at the beginning, from my owners. They're like, "Oh, how are we going to handle damage claims?" Then I'm like, "All right, now I got to figure out how to handle damage claims." Like you kind of just learn as you go. I think that was actually probably one of the best things I did was I was just like, I'm okay not knowing all of these things. I'm just going to keep going because I know that I'll be able to figure it out when that time comes. And it's a little embarrassing at times, but you got to be okay with that, especially if you're starting a business. You got to understand you're not going to know everything. But those are really like the simple things if you're starting from absolutely zero. And that's everything we just named is under $2,000 to start.
It's a great business model that allows you to get started with, very little upfront. Question I had for you. I know you deal with a lot of really nice properties, luxury style properties. From what I've heard from a lot of people who've kind of started in this industry, they kind of took whatever they could get, which usually maybe was, less ideal properties. What would you recommend to someone who's looking to get started in this? Would you recommend like, hey, if you get the opportunity to kind of take a mid-tier property just to get your feet wet to do it? Or are you like, you know what, now knowing what you know, would you be like, just hold out, find those high quality luxury properties, less headaches, more revenue once you get one? Or what's your kind of standpoint on that?
Yeah, this is a super common question too, especially because I also coach, smaller or up and coming operators. And I think the easy answer is to hold out, but I think the honest answer is just take what you can get to start because you need to earn your stripes a little bit in order to get the $200,000 property. You're probably going to have to get the $50,000 property first. So my very first property was a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom condo that maybe broke $35,000 in gross, annual revenue, which is nothing. I think I was making $200 or something from that, but it gave me the confidence. It also gave me the ability to set up my systems and actually have a repeatable process after that to go and do it with a larger property. So I took that $35,000 property and then went on and got a $50,000 property, which made me even more confident. And again, it's kind of like, you want to learn how to play baseball and be a professional MLB player. You're going to start off a tee. Like any skill that we're learning, we gotta focus on the things that are going to help us develop into the best version of yourself or whatever you're doing. So like for me, those first couple properties were just T-ball. I was just like getting the reps. So then I can focus on being in Yankee Stadium under the bright lights if that day ever came. So I think of course it's nice. Our model has shifted entirely to luxury properties now that we have a staff that we're trying to, we have to pay, we have a few more operating expenses. So we need to make sure we're taking on properties that can support that, where our entry level properties no longer could, just in terms of dollar per month in our pockets for a $60,000 revenue property versus a $600,000 revenue property. So I think to build the confidence in the systems, I do believe it's important to just take what you can get. And then eventually, as you scale, that's when you can recalibrate and make decisions based on what's best for your current state of the business. So I actually had to fire a few clients of my early day clients because they were not sustainable for our growth as we started focusing on luxury, high revenue producing properties. So, I love them. It was a stepping stone. And I think that was important for me. I think there are people that can make it work saying, hey, we're only going to take on properties that make us that gross $100,000 a year. I think that's awesome, but it's much harder to get that property if you haven't tried your systems and your strategy and you don't have a case study. That's a big one, is like having a case study to reference for these owners that want to see, hey, have you done this? How many properties in your portfolio? What do your systems look like? And if you've never done it and you're like, hey, I only want these luxury ones, I think it's possible. It's just going to take you a lot longer. But at this point where we're at now, we only want luxury. We won't touch. We pass on roughly 85% of deals that come to us. So we're getting a lot of deals that we're like, hey, this is awesome. We wish you luck. We're going to refer this out to another property manager that is willing to take this on. But we're only focused on, at this point, like 150K plus properties with pools is more of our niche. Whereas, before, early days, whatever it is, it could be a box on the street. We'll throw it on Airbnb. If it gets rented, we'll take it.
Love it. No, I think that was a great response, and actually like really honest for people to be like, hey, it's nice to think only go for luxury properties, because you'll hear people say that. Yeah. The reality is if you don't have, if you have nothing to back it up, if people can't see it, they're probably not going to hand over the keys to you if you got nothing behind you. So start low, build your way up. Have you found that your marketing approach or how you're trying to find the clients, has it changed since you've gone into the luxury market more? Or do you find it's just a product of the fact that you have a history, you've got the Google reviews, and those realtors trust you? Or have you had to kind of change and alter things to attract those different higher level clients?
Yeah, I think as we've grown into more of a luxury brand, like there's a few tweaks you can immediately make for any company that wants to be more luxury. Like one example is on Google My Business, when you're putting your title or your business name in there, it's 5-star vacation home rentals, luxury Airbnb management company, right? Like you kind of just start putting it into the world. So like, for SEO and keyword purposes, like you pop up when there is the word luxury in there. Also, we are starting to get a lot of inbound leads through ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude. This has been a super exciting thing for us. And I will say, we essentially do no outbound business development at this point. It's almost entirely inbound. So a lot of that came from relationships that we've nurtured over the last few years, and agents will send us deals. We also host meetups, which kind of funnel people towards our brand, and they start to think about, okay, like who can we call? 5-star, great. Then we have the conversation. But this AI business development has been really, really helpful for us lately, because if people are looking up, who's the top short-term rental management company in Austin, Texas, it varies, I think, based on whoever's looking it up and where they're looking it up and all that. But for the most part, we've been popping up a ton. And that's been a huge lead source as people are starting to use these AI tools as their new search engines. So that's been a huge inbound lead funnel. Other long-term property managers are also a really strong lead funnel, because it's so synergistic. They don't mess with us, we don't mess with them. If you want long-term, go to them. If you want short-term, come to us. And then our agents just continue to funnel us new clients as well as other owners. I think this is one of the best parts about starting to scale is you now have testimonials from all of these owners that have trusted you with their property and to fulfill the services that you're marketing. So they can tell their friends like, oh, their friends are asking, oh, I see you have this vacation rental. How does that work? Oh, we have this property manager, 5-star. They're great. And they're like, all right, well, I'm looking at buying a property in Austin. You should, and then they connect us and, everyone's smiling and high fiving and all that. So like, it's all inbound at this point. We're starting to look into what it would look like to get into outbound because we're like, all right, what do we want to do with this thing? How much do we want to scale? There's also a huge influx of private equity coming into the short-term rental management space. I think mostly because it is a high profit margin, high cash flow business. So what we're seeing is a lot of private equity capital is getting deployed, and we are seeing now these private equity backed companies that really take a dip in their quality. So that means there's a lot of frustrated owners. And I think the general consensus with property managers is it's hard to find a good one. So one of the best things we've done for marketing inadvertently is just be really focused on quality. I'm not even just saying that as BS. Like we spend so much money on the quality of our homes. So, when an owner is pissed off that their private equity backed management company is not keeping their home in that tip top condition, they're reaching out to us and we're like, we've heard this a million times, let's talk. And then we end up signing a lot of those clients that are already with other property management companies that are unhappy. So that's a huge opportunity in this space too, that we capitalize on as a local, smaller, private equity backed business. Is like, we control our decisions. We're not just purely profit focused. We are also focused on pride of business. We're focused on quality. And that's actually led in turn to more profit because owners want to work with us rather than these big private equity backed companies. So that was a lot, but a lot of inbound.
That's a lot. I think the gold nugget there is using AI to bring in business, which I think a lot of service-based businesses aren't tapping into. They don't know about it. Funny enough, I think the first time that I heard about you and found you was a post that you had on Instagram talking about how you've been generating leads through ChatGPT. And I saw that and I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Yeah. And then I think I started going down the rabbit hole of your social. So it's just kind of funny that you bring that up because I do think that's a great point. And I think for a lot of people out there listening, really, if you have a business, you're looking to get into a business, utilizing that because a lot more people are using whatever AI program they use to search and find things like they used to use for Google. So it's a great opportunity to find business.
Yeah. Can I add one thing to that real quick?
Oh, yeah.
So
sure.
Just anyone, because a few things we've mentioned are just SEO based. It's, Google My Business, and that's just all search rankings. Same thing with ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, search rankings. One of the things that any business owner can do if they're more of like a service or review based business is add a blog section to your website. This is just a very simple, practical tool that helps with your SEO, and you can throw in your keywords. So, for us, we're Airbnb management company, we're going to say Airbnb, short-term rentals, listing optimization, revenue management, those keywords that people will be looking for. So a blog section to your website is super important. And then just doubling down on the reviews you get. Because a lot of the times ChatGPT is just pulling from Google. They're scraping for keywords and they're scraping for reviews. So being able to maximize the reviews you have and then add a blog section with keywords is super important. And then that also ties into our Airbnb listings because that's also SEO. Airbnb is an algorithm. So they are looking for those keywords, little things like, are all of your photos captioned? When you click on a photo of a bedroom, is there a caption saying this is a queen bed with a Tempur-Pedic mattress? Like that's all SEO. So just like focusing on these little practical things you can do to increase your ranking. It's been super huge for our Airbnb listings and then our business exposure when they're going on Google or ChatGPT and that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's great advice.
Yeah.
I wanted to jump and take a look at, so we kind of talked about how to go from, your first property, and it sounds like you went all the way up to 10 sort of really just bootstrapping it, doing it by yourself. What does your organization look like now? So what is that sort of next stage after you go from, okay, I'm doing all of it on my own, to now it's like, okay, I'm bringing in good revenue. I want this thing to grow. What does that next stage look like? What's your business structure look like right now?
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a lot different. So just like the general team, we have a team in San Antonio, we have a team in Austin, and we have a partner down in San Antonio that really oversees that side of the business. And we did a merger with them, which is a big reason we've been able to scale to 70 properties, because they brought on through that merger about 20 properties. And the team down there, mostly being oversaw by this partner, it's 2 local managers. So our local managers are mostly around quality, a huge reason and a huge thing we talk about for our business development and just our value proposition is we have people going in after the cleaners, doing quality checks, checking about a 200-point checklist to make sure filters are changed, there's no scuffs on the walls, the dishwasher's working, all of the things that come with a property. They also do our consumables. They order a ton of items. They help fix different, little, scuffs and repairs needed throughout the house. So we have 2 local managers there. And then we also have 2 local managers in Austin help us do the same exact thing. And then we also have 2 in-house maintenance coordinators. So with any property now, there's just so much maintenance that goes into it. So we have our local managers and our in-house maintenance in Austin working together. So the local managers and their quality checks say, okay, looks like this fan is not working. Maintenance comes in the next day and they fix that. So we're overseeing that team. And then we have another maintenance coordinator in the Philippines that really helps us oversee the entire operation and the coordination of all that. And then we have, at this point, I think 7 other virtual assistants all in the Philippines that help us with back end, guest messaging, checking the cameras. They do all the damage claims and pretty much anything that has to do with, an admin task. So I think I'm missing someone too. We have our bookkeeper, which is also one of the most important roles for what we do. There are so many expenses coming in and out of these properties. So that's great. We have a social media coordinator. So it's really just like, grown. We're at 17, 18 people on the team now. So it's grown a lot in the last 2 years.
Do you utilize a lot of people overseas? Are you doing a lot of like sort of VAs, or do you find with this business you need sort of more local knowledge, boots on the ground? Obviously cleaners, of course, they need to physically be there, but how about those other sort of operations level people?
Yeah, it just depends how much of a life you want outside of your business. I think we really lean on both. So we need people, boots on the ground, to be there at these properties, especially when something comes up. Right now, we have a fridge that's not working. So we have 2 people on our team going to that property with coolers full of ice to drop it off for that guest and like really make that guest experience special. Like you need people on site, especially for these Airbnbs where across 70 of them, there's always going to be something. You never know what kind of guests you're going to have. So having people, especially if, I want to go on a vacation, I used to do all of that alone. I don't want to do most of that anymore. So like having someone that can step in locally, I think is kind of a non-negotiable if you want to, enjoy some space away from the business, or if you want to travel and that kind of stuff. And then in terms of a virtual assistant, like there's so many messages that come through. There's so many little day-to-day tasks, early check-in requests, late checkout requests, the fees, and just having a team to be able to take all of that time off of my plate and my partner's plate is so crucial to allowing us to like step out and focus more on the higher level, business development, the bookkeeping, the owner relationships, that kind of stuff. So there's kind of an order to it too. I would say you can get away with doing a lot of this on your own up into a certain point. Of course, there's got to be a margin for these, the staff you bring on from, the money you're making, in your company. But yeah, I think at this point, it's almost necessary to have both. I think at the beginning, you can get away with doing it on your own, but then you quickly realize in the Airbnb business, that's a lot of work and you're showing up way more than you want to. So that's when hopefully you're focused on the highest dollar per hour activity. That's when I'm really leaning into sales and marketing to then bring on more properties that can support this local team. So I would try to get to a local, manager, onboarding specialist, whatever you want to call them. But I think it usually is around 10 or so properties to be able to support that role, which, since I believe in transparency, that role is typically, $55,000 to $65,000 is going to be kind of like the going rate for that local manager. That could be your extra set of hands.
And I'm sure once you brought that person on, it probably just freed up a ton of your time.
So much. And then you bring on another one and it frees up some more time. And then you can fill that with bringing the back end systems. That's where like my role has developed so much, because it used to be me going on site, doing all of the, hands-on stuff. And then I was like, okay, I'm way too in the weeds here. I got to focus more on business development. And that's when it allowed me to get the capital to support this team. And then I need to make sure my team is actually supported with the infrastructure. So then I'm setting up the systems for them. So we're using task management softwares like Breezeway or communication softwares like Slack. So it's not just all this one big, pile of shit. There's actually some structure to our team. And then I need to go back to business development so we can keep growing and keep scaling, and then support, an additional, couple team members. And that's kind of the constant push and pull of a business owner is, if you want to support a team and kind of get out of the business, you're going to have to focus on the business development so you can support that team to hopefully allow you to go off and focus on the higher level stuff, or just take a break. Like that's one of the biggest things we're focused on right now. Is it's been a fun 2 years, but it's been a very high workload for the last 2 years. So like the perks of being the business owner is now you're in a position to hire and hopefully hire someone that can remove yourself from the business. Unless, it depends on what you want. But for us, like we're looking for a little more peace and calm, a little more sand in our toes. So we're going to make sure we can support that, with our local team.
I think that was a great breakdown. You're just kind of talking about Breezeway and Turno. What's your tech stack look like right now to be able to operate 70 properties? Yeah.
So our property management software is OwnerRez is what we use. And then for guest messaging, we also use Hospitable. We use Slack to have a one-stop shop for communication across our team. And then we have Breezeway, which is where we track all maintenance, and all cleaners are on there to know, when to clean, what template to go through, and kind of like track all those checklists and those property visits. We're also on VR platform and TopKey. That's been huge for our bookkeeping and cleaning up our owner statements that we send to owners at the end of the month. We have, little, I guess what you call it, like data storage. So Airtable is how we know who is the vendor at each property. So we have our pest control, our pool service, our lawn care, our trash service, who does all of those things? What day is it on? How much are we getting charged for that? Where's the contact information? And then there's a few other random ones, our company phone numbers, open phone or Quo now, stuff like that. But for the most part, that's what we're using. And then we're also now kind of our next fun project is implementing Notion, which is essentially going to be our AI-driven operating center. So if you have any questions about these properties, what day is trash day? Where is the key to the cleaner's closet? Whatever it is, this will be a tool to be able to have that information within 5 seconds, just like you can with ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. So that's kind of our new AI integration that we're working on. But everything else is what we're using right now to keep the ship running.
I sort of wanted to switch gears a bit because I know a lot of people listening want to hear about the numbers, hear about the financials and all that fun stuff. So let's sort of switch over and let's dive a little bit deeper into the financials of this business. I think your split is about 20% property management fee. So what does that look like really when you're managing 70 luxury properties? What are you actually bringing in revenue? What's your profit margin? What are some of your expense items that you have coming out, just so a person can get a true picture of like, hey, if I got into this business, like what could I actually make here? Is it really as good as it sounds?
Yeah. So like the simplest way to think about it is it's 20% of total revenue. And let's say if you're managing a property that is bringing in gross across all platforms, Airbnb, VRBO, direct bookings, whatever you use, let's say it's bringing in $100,000, you're making $20,000 from that. Just like super simple without getting into the weeds of it. And then if you are doing it at scale like we're doing, then we need to support our team. So at the beginning, our profit margin was almost 90%, because there was very few expenses. But now we have a team, we're paying roughly about $300,000 just in local salaries. And then and that's annually, we're paying $300,000 in salaries. And then across our virtual assistant team, I'm going to guess maybe 1,000, probably another $6,000 a month. So $72,000 a year in like virtual assistant salaries. And then, where we're at. So across the portfolio, we're just under $10 million, but for simple numbers, that's gross revenue across all properties. So then we're taking 20%, and actually on average, because of like negotiated contracts, some of these larger properties, we're doing, 16, 17% management contracts rather than the full 20%, because we have some properties that bring in $500,000 a year. So at 20%, we're making $100,000 just off that one property. So we've negotiated a few of those. So I think our portfolio average is about 18% for our management fee. So we're right about close to 9 million in total gross revenue across the properties. If I'm doing some quick math, we do 18% of that. Then that is 1,620,000. That's, again, these are rough numbers, but then our profit margin is whatever. 600,000 goes to expenses, salaries, softwares, all that kind of stuff. That last $1 million is pretty much what we're splitting. So a little under, but that's the high level of how that works for us.
Wow. I think hopefully anyone listening is getting just as inspired as I am by this, that within 2 years, being able to grow a business to this amount, doing some strategic mergers, bringing on the right people, focusing on value and relationships, but really in a 2-year window, being able to build a $10 million business is pretty awesome. And I think with this business model, it's something that a person can do. Like, you didn't come into it with hotel experience or managing hotels or anything like that.
Yeah.
You came in with a different background and something. So you saw a course, you did the research, you started taking action within 2 years, $10 million business. That's awesome, man. Like, good for you. I hope anyone listening is sort of hearing that and thinking like, wow, like, okay, I could do the same thing that Ryan's doing here if I wanted to get into it. So, I mean, I just wanted to commend you for
Thank you. Thank you, brother.
Doing such a great job, man. So just on a personal note, like, awesome, man. Good for you. That's amazing. I did want to know what's your take on top amenities that you think, I know you mentioned one of your properties does over $500,000 in a year. Like, what amenities do people need to put in to maybe not drive that kind of numbers, but, get significant numbers in Austin and in most other towns out there?
Yeah. The highest ROI amenity is always going to be your backyard. That is the thing that sells more than anything else in the Airbnb space. If you are in a summer market and you're not on a beach, you got to have a pool. To have a high performing property, all of our top properties have pools. If you really want to juice it up, you're going to have a pool and lake access with a boat slip. If you're on a beachfront market, you're going to have, access to that beach. So like, the location's such a big part of it. If you can't control the location, you're in the middle of America, whatever it is, finding a property with a pool and really vamping up that backyard, because just the backyard alone can be that hero shot. You really only have one photo when you're going through all these thousands of Airbnb listings. That first cover photo they're going to want to be amazed. They're going to want something that's going to capture their attention. Most of the time, that's backyards, having that pool. Other little things we do is convert garages into game rooms. That's a huge ROI, amenity upgrade. Other than that, there's all the basics we can go into. Have king beds. You can make them pet friendly, all that. But I think the highest ROI levers you can pull are vamping up that backyard. If you don't have a pool at a lot of properties, we build a pool, costs us $80,000. But if you think about the ROI on that, if it's going to make you another $40,000 a year, we're going to take that because that's 50% cash on cash on that investment. So adding the pool and then maybe converting a game room are some of the things that we like to do the most to keep these things bringing cash in.
Awesome. Is that a hard sell to the owners of a property? Be like, hey, you want to drop $80,000 to throw a pool in? I imagine that's a fun conversation to have.
Yeah, we have the conversation based on data. Like, I think that's been a thing that's helped us have more difficult conversations because it removes that emotion from it. It's not and at this point, it's not an obligation for them to do, but it's more of an obligation for them to work with us because we know how valuable pools are. And if they see the numbers, just like I was mentioning there, 80,000 to make 40,000 more a year, that number makes a lot of sense, especially if you're an investor, which a lot of people we work with are investors. Like, they're going to start thinking like an investor. Okay, that ROI is incredibly high. Where else are you going to put $80,000 in to make your money back in 2 years?
That's a good point.
So that's the kind of conversation we have. And it makes it easier, but I still think for some owners writing that check is not fun. Their hands shaking a little bit, but we've made it work at probably about 10 properties we've added pools at now.
Nice. And you got the data to back it up, which probably makes the conversation a bit easier.
Yeah.
I know we've been chatting for a while. I got one last question because I imagine for anyone out there who's maybe going to approach an owner, probably the top issue that an owner might have on taking on someone to manage their property is just that 20% that they're paying out. I'm sure that's probably the biggest roadblock that you've had over the past few years as you've been growing the business. What would you say, or how do you approach an owner when that kind of comes up as like the mental block in their mind of bringing you on as a manager? How do you kind of get over that? Hey, this is why paying that 20% is worth it.
Yeah. So like a few things. The first thing was we always call it 80-20 split, just like some sales psychology is we're trying to make sure it's always favored towards them. So it's an 80-20 split in their favor is one of the first things we do when we're talking about our fee if they ask. And then the rest of it is really going off market rates. So we're in business. It's a lot of supply and demand. And what do other property managers that manage short-term rentals charge? And then it's usually you'll see 10% is the absolute lowest up to 25%. And then we're 20%. So we're talking about what makes us different. And like we are a white glove property management service for short-term rentals. A lot of these 10, 15% management fee companies, they're not offering the entire full service range that we are. So, they might just do guest messaging and revenue management. They might not be doing maintenance. They might not be doing quality checks. We're doing preventative maintenance checks. So a lot of it is just talking about all of the things we do and just like going into the weeds of what a full service manager should look like. And the market rate aligns with 20%. So we're staying with 20%. And then the other thing is we actually at this point kind of encourage them to talk to other management companies because we are pretty confident in our service and our portfolio. So we're saying, go talk to other people, see what feels good. We don't really negotiate our fee because of, the inbound, business that we are seeing. We have, enough people reaching out that it wouldn't make sense for us as a business to negotiate that fee. But, if it's still something that you're interested in, now that you see and understand what we do, we'd love to explore a partnership. So, I think that's actually one of the biggest switches over time over the last 2 years that's helped us convert more leads into clients is just not trying to oversell them. Like, be like, this is our market. This is market rate. Here's what we do, and here's how we do it. But like, go talk to some other people and see how that feels. And then, if you feel like, we have a good alignment and you feel like this could work as a partnership, then reach back out and we'd love to partner with you on this. So that's led to pretty high success in terms of, the leads we're seeing versus what we're converting. And I feel like we actually don't get a lot of pushback at this point. And they'll say, can you negotiate? And we'll say, sorry, we're pretty firm on this. And then they'll say, okay.
Awesome. It's that if you build it, they will come sort of approach. Build a great business, great service, get those 5-star reviews, and people are just going to come to you and they're willing to pay for that top quality white glove service. I think from today's podcast, anyone listening here, you pretty much got a roadmap if you want to get into this business. I think Ryan laid out a complete from first property all the way to a multi-million-dollar business, laid it all out step by step for people. I learned a ton. It's awesome. I really think this is a great business model. I love learning more about it and hearing from people who are just, crushing it in it. Ryan, if people want to find you, where can they find you on social?
Yeah, my tag is at It's a Leak. So I have some fun on there. I try to be very real with the numbers, and I also try to show you what the behind the scenes looks like. Also on TikTok, it's Ryan Leake. And then I also have a website, ryan-leak.com. So that's more for a small group coaching and one-on-one consulting. So those are the best places to reach out. And I'm an open book. Like, I love talking about this. I felt very stuck only about 2 years ago in a corporate job. And this was one of the 1,000 paths that I was considering. And I just went all in on it. And it's been a awesome, crazy, fun journey. And I have so many thoughts on it. So if someone's interested to learn more, they can always reach out. And, I'm really just an open book. So happy to share.
Yeah, I love it. And just a plug for Ryan too. Ryan learned from a course and grew a $10 million business in 2 years. I'm pretty sure, I think, Ryan, you do some coaching or you have a course yourself. So I highly recommend for anyone who is interested in this business, go follow Ryan on, his social. I love some of your series. I love the What People Left Behind series. But also, if this is something that you're serious about and you want to learn more about it, reach out to Ryan and see if there's maybe an opportunity to, learn from him, get some coaching from him, or even just watch his socials and just absorb it and learn. And I know anyone who's doing that has a really good chance of being successful in this. Is there anything else you want to add, Ryan, or think that was a good summary for people out there?
I just hope this helped. I hope this is one of those podcasts that someone can listen to and feel like they learned something or got excited about this or gave them some clarity around whether or not this path is for them. So yeah, that's all I got. If there's anything else I missed, I'm always happy to talk.
Awesome. Ryan, thanks again for coming on the Ordinary Millionaire podcast, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.